Hello and welcome everyone. We are back on Dharma podcast with none other than Sandeep Balakrishna. We are continuing to chronicle the history of the Congress Party with Sandeep. In the last episode, Sandeep clearly established that Gandhi emerged as the father of Indian communalism. In spite of objections from luminaries like Ambedkar and Shankaran Nair, he continued on that path, overtly endorsing the Khilafat movement and the Pan-Islamic cause. He compounded it further by his one-sided obsession with Maulana Muhammad Ali, and he declared himself as the brand ambassador or the sole reason or the mascot for having aroused the political consciousness of Muslims in India. We will now continue this conversation with Sandeep Balakrishna further from this stage of the history of the Congress Party. Thank you all for joining. Hello Sandeep.
Hi Parag.
Good to be back with you after Deepavali.
Likewise.
So Sandeep, you established and disrupted a whole lot of narratives that have been consumed by many generations, like I mentioned in the beginning. So could you take us through the journey of the Congress Party from here on, which seems to be inextricably linked to Gandhi and his shenanigans?
Yeah, thanks Parag. We've taken quite a long break of about 3 weeks, all the while chronicling the detailed history or the comprehensive history of the Indian National Congress Party. So, just to give a quick recap, we looked at the pivotal year 1919, in which which was a very eventful year to say the least, and we began chronicling how Gandhi took the frontal leadership not only of the Congress Party, but jumped into supporting and taking leadership of a Pan-Islamic cause called the Khilafat movement. And throughout this journey of chronicling his nascent leadership, both of the Congress Party and the Khilafat agitation, we also saw and dug out several forgotten and carefully hidden details and anecdotes and historical facts that the Congress Party and the government found it inconvenient after India attained a questionable freedom. So now in the previous episode we closed it, like you said, by showing how Gandhi was the father, the progenitor of communal politics in India. Now, with the formation of the Khilafat Committee in 1919 and all its deliberations that followed in its wake, we now come into the year 1920. So I had touched upon what happened in the early months of 1920. So from there we can now arrive at May 30th, 1920. This is when the All India Congress Committee, AICC, it held a meeting in Varanasi, in which, meeting to discuss, the nuts and bolts of how to take the Khilafat agitation forward. So the proposal mooted by Gandhi was to make this agitation into a peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation. Peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation, both in which both Hindus and Muslims would join and protest against the British government, and to put pressure on the British government to withdraw the Treaty of Severus, which pretty much shattered the power of the Turkish Caliph or Khalifa. So now on 30th May 1920, the AICC, which met at Varanasi, in that meeting, AICC did not endorse the non-cooperation movement mooted by Gandhi and the Muslim part, which is a Khilafat Committee. In fact, Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak was in the city of Kashi exactly on that day, and you know what? He did not attend this meeting. Guess who were all the main leaders who attended this committee meeting at Banaras? Gandhi, of course, Motilal Nehru, Lala Lajpat Rai, Tej Bahadur Sapru, Bipin Chandrapal, Madan Mohan Malviya, Satyamurthy, C. Rajagopalachari, Jawaharlal Nehru, and a very powerful Congress leader named Mr. Chintamani. Annie Besant was also there, and she strongly opposed the Congress party support for Khilafat. These are recorded facts, Parag. Now, the meeting went on for 3-4 days, after which it reached a decisive point. On that day, Gandhi, I think it was on June 3rd or 4th, if I'm not mistaken. On that day, Gandhi made a conclusive speech at the meeting. And this is what he said, that a small extract from his speech. Quote, "This meeting reaffirms the movement of non-cooperation as approved by the Khilafat Committee and appoints a subcommittee to give practical effect to the movement without further delay." These are Gandhi's words in that meeting. Yes.
So isn't this subterfuge? Because the approval wasn't there, right? Most people protested, no?
Yeah, most people protested, but then Gandhi being Gandhi,
He prevailed.
he prevailed.
Okay.
I'll come to that. This whole story of how he kept on prevailing. I'll give you several anecdotes, and we'll see how that is. Some of those facts are really astounding, to say the least. Now, that subcommittee, which was constituted to give practical shape and action, ground action to the Khilafat agitation. Now, this subcommittee, it comprised 7 men. 6 of them were Muslims. Gandhi was the 7th. The only Hindu. So this is, remember what we spoke in the previous episode, where Dr. Ambedkar clearly said that Gandhi was the only Hindu within the Congress party and outside it to lead, to lend his full support to the Khilafat. See how it ties in beautifully. So after this subcommittee, it issued a letter basically announcing this non-cooperation movement, and this letter was widely sent to throughout the nation. It was also sent to the British Viceroy back then, and to about 90 influential leaders of the Muslim community, all of whom endorsed this non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat. And what might surprise many people today, Parag, is the fact that overall the Muslim community was not too keen to support this non-cooperation movement, because after all, the Muslim community is led by its clerics. They were not too keen on this non-cooperation movement because they had different ideas. In fact, there was also another overarching factor for why the large sections of the Muslim community didn't want to join this non-cooperation movement. That reason was that the very thought of going against the full might of the British colonial government, it scared them, because they knew what the British were capable of. The retaliation would be decisive, swift and brutal and unsparing. So these were some of the major sentiments that prevailed in the Muslim community about this non-cooperation movement. Now, here is one more important tidbit of history that might shock a lot of people today. So before we get into the tidbit, let me first read out a quote from a very, very significant participant of that meeting in Banaras. Quote, "I remember the meeting thoroughly disappointed me. Shaukat Ali, of course, was full of enthusiasm, but almost all the others looked thoroughly unhappy and uncomfortable. They did not have the courage to disagree, and yet they obviously had no intention of doing anything rash. Were these the people to lead a revolutionary movement, I thought, and to challenge the British Empire? Gandhiji addressed them, and after hearing them, they looked even more frightened than before. He spoke well in his best dictatorial voice. This is going to be a great struggle, he said, with a very powerful adversary. When war is declared, martial law prevails, and in our non-violent struggle, there will also have to be dictatorship and martial law on our side if we are to win. These military analogies and the unyielding earnestness of Gandhi made the flesh of most of the audience creep. Close quote. Take a wild guess who said this, Parag.
Ambedkar.
He was not in the meeting, no?
He's not in. Sorry.
None other than Nawab Nehru.
Nehru said this.
Yep. This is the same Nawab Nehru, the same great leader who later went on to become Gandhi's pet disciple. He is the same leader, the same Nawab, who single-handedly milked Gandhi's deaths to the hilt. Strange are the ways of politics and sainthood, Parag. Anyway, but Nehru was not done yet. He continues, and I quote him. This is beautiful. Quote, but Shaukat Ali was there to keep the waverers up to the mark. And when the time for voting came, the great majority of them quietly and shamefacedly voted for the proposition. Does this answer your question?
Yes,
How Gandhi prevailed?
Yes.
Continues Nehru. As we were coming home from the meeting, I asked Gandhiji if this was a way to start a great struggle. I had expected enthusiasm, spirited language, and a flashing of eyes from the audience. Instead, we saw a very tame gathering of timid middle-aged folk. Close quote. So, this was Nawab Nehru back then. You know, he calls the rest of the Congress gathering in that meeting as what? Tame gathering of timid middle-aged folk. And on August 1st, 1920, this is a very, very important date. So on August 1st, 1920, the Khilafat movement officially started with an all India hartal under Gandhiji's leadership. And August 1st, 1920 was also the exact day on which Lokamanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak exited this mortal world.
Tragic timing.
With that, the theatre of Gandhian absurdity was finally cleared of the last thorny obstacle named Bal Gangadhar Tilak. So Gandhi was free to impose his unhinged, untrammeled dictatorship, and we'll look at that story as we go on. August 1st was also the day when Gandhi wrote a letter to the British Viceroy, and along with it, he returned all the war medals which were awarded to him by the British for his support for the First World War. Remember, for all his claims of fighting for India's freedom struggle, it was Gandhi and Gandhi alone who led the Congress party, who convinced the Congress party to support the British side in both world wars. Anyway, now here is a small extract from that letter that Gandhi wrote to Viceroy. Quote, valuable as these honors have been to me, I cannot wear them with an easy conscience so long as my Musalman countrymen have to labor under the wrong done to their religious sentiment. Close quote.
He literally wrote the script of what has been playing out.
Okay. You see this, Parag, what does it tell you? You see where Gandhi's true sentiments were. What his real psyche was. It was not with the Indian freedom struggle, but with a pan-Islamic transnational Muslim cause. Just as Gandhi was the strongest supporter and bulwark of British imperialism, he was also the strongest and the staunchest ally and supporter of pan-Islamic imperialism, which was located not in India but in faraway Turkey. De di hame azad bina khadg bina dal sabarmati ke sant tune kar diya kamal. इस संत ने तो कमाल ही कर दिया. Look at the levels of this miracle, this kamal. We were told, and we are still told that he single-handedly, with his indomitable and unchallengeable force of truth and non-violence, got us freedom. Anyway, back then, it is clear that Gandhi's single-minded obsession was Khilafat and nothing but Khilafat. And it was Gandhi and Gandhi alone who took what was an isolated and a sectarian and highly bigoted demand like the Khilafat and transformed it into a national agitation which no Hindu had asked for, much less welcomed. Yet, some Hindus supported it after Gandhi's intervention. Why? The great Dr. R.C. Majumdar supplies the answer, quote, some sections of the Hindus supported Khilafat under Gandhi's leadership, partly out of devotion to Gandhi and in deference to his judgment. These symptoms misled the Hindu political leaders into an exaggerated idea of the importance of the Khilafat movement in India and the role it was destined to play in the Muslim world. Their poor knowledge about the Muslim countries of Asia led them to place an extravagant value on an alliance between the Congress and the Khilafat movement. This is a very important insight. Their poor knowledge about Pan-Islamic politics playing out elsewhere in the world. So their idea of all these Khilafat agitation, Muslim demands, British colonialism was very limited, was very narrow. They didn't have a large worldview. You can't blame them, but the reason for their support to Khilafat, an important reason is this. Majumdar continues. The ludicrously absurd extent to which they went may be judged from the following observations made by even a leader like C. Rajagopalachari, who is well known for his political acumen. And this is what Rajagopalachari wrote in a letter or in an article. Quote from Rajaji's letter. The Khilafat has solved the problem of distrust of Asiatic neighbors out of our future. No wars of aggression are possible where the common people on two sides have become grateful friends, it seems. The faith of the Mussalman is a much better sanction than the seal of European diplomats.
Say that again, sorry.
The faith of the Mussalman in Hindus basically is a better sanction than the seal of European diplomats. Not only has this great friendship between India and the Mussalman states around it removed for all times the fear of Mussalman aggression, the Indian support of the Khilafat has, as if by a magic wand, converted what was once the pan-Islamic terror of Europe into a solid wall of friendship and defense for India. Close quote. This is what Rajagopalachari writes. Unbelievable. You know, they were Rajaji's words, sure, but they were also the words of a puppet who had been thoroughly brainwashed by the Gandhian brand of surf excel. This fake saint and the phony Mahatma was also a master manipulator of even the best of minds. You see, Parag, not too many people know these things today, but a man like Rajaji, Rajagopalachari, he was and he still remains as one of the most underrated giants who strode very easily across multiple domains, including politics, literature, music, dharmashastras, scholarship, and he excelled equally in all of these. Rajaji was a devout practitioner of Hindu Dharma, and he wrote the classic abridged Mahabharata while he took a short break from politics. He wrote this book just as time passed. Okay, this was the man. And yet, such a man was hoodwinked by this saintly political shopkeeper of Sabarmati. Rajaji was hoodwinked and his role was thereby dwarfed in the freedom struggle and later. This is a tragedy.
It is.
This is a tragedy. In fact, R.C. Majumdar pretty much says the same thing using a beautiful and well-known literary metaphor, and I quote him. One cannot be blamed for holding that Gandhi had a split personality like Jekyll and Hyde, a non-cooperator as a Khilafatist, and a cooperator as a congressman. So this needs some explanation. What he means when he says that a non-cooperator as a Khilafatist. Remember, Gandhi himself launched the non-cooperation movement first, even before Khilafat, as a continuation of Bal Gangadhar Tilak's, remember that point about non-cooperation but conditional cooperation. So Gandhi championed it on the one side, and he also became the leader of the Khilafat movement, which had nothing to do with Indian freedom struggle, right?
Yeah, so he obviously had a game plan, right?
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde.
Right, Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde, as simple. And if this is what R.C. Majumdar said it in using a literary metaphor, C. Shankaran Nair, you mentioned his name, and we spoke about him in the last episode. Shankaran Nair was straight out blunt, and I quote him. The Khilafat movement does not want, and Mr. Gandhi is not for, any reasonable settlement of the Mohammedan grievance. Such being the objective, the Khilafat Indian agitators have put forward demands which the Turks themselves recognize as outside the scope of practical politics.
Imagine. A borrowed movement and going beyond the scope.
Imagine. Everybody now realizes that this attitude of the Khilafat movement under the guidance of Gandhi and Muhammad Ali stood in the way of any reasonable settlement. It is a futile endeavor of the Indian and the British governments to satisfy Mr. Gandhi or the Khilafat agitators led by the Ali brothers. Gandhi and his followers have greatly encouraged the growth of Indian Pan-Islamism, which in future will always be opposed to other religions and civilizations. How true.
How true. And like you keep saying,
how true.
The lament, where have these men gone?
Where have these men gone? Anyway, here is Shankaran Nair again. Pan-Islamism or Pan-Christianity belong to the world that is dead and not to the world that is living. There is no such thing as Pan-Hinduism. They mean destruction, proselytization, and the assertion of their superiority only. This also shows the dangerous foundation on which the Gandhi's movement rests. Swaraj or political independence is not what he really wants. How many times have you said this? Okay? It is not the caliph's grievances that have led Gandhi to claim political independence. He wants to destroy the very notion of government itself. He is a hater of all governments. Close quote. You don't get these insights in any mainstream writing, which is an additional tragedy, Parag. Yeah?
Profound, and he saw it for what it is.
Remember, Shankaran Nair wrote this in 1922, and his extraordinary foresight and his penetrating assessment of Gandhi's character, his behavior, his actions, all of them were proven right, repeatedly proven right, all the way till Gandhi's death. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, let's once again return to the same date, August 1st, 1920. Like I said, that was the day Gandhi officially unleashed the Khilafat movement and the non-cooperation agitation throughout India. But something else had already happened in Malegaon, Maharashtra. The same Malegaon.
Same Malegaon.
Same Malegaon.
Colonel Purohit.
This had happened in April 1920. So, August, cut back to April 1920. Okay. In April 1920, that month, it witnessed the dark preface to a series of anti-Hindu violent incidents that would erupt throughout India after September 1920, all thanks to Gandhi's frontal leadership of the Khilafat movement. That month, in April 1920, a gang of Muslim mobs, they unleashed pure naked terror against the Hindu population in Malegaon, all thanks to the preachings made in support of the same Khilafat movement. These preachings were known as wazas, and they were done in mosques by the Muslim clergy. The full details of this Malegaon anti-Hindu violence will be narrated in the next episode of this series.
The brevity and the choice of words that Sandeep used in the last 30 minutes or so, I think again has tabled so many stupefying and horrid facts about Gandhi's agenda, and concluding with what happened or what had begun in Malegaon, thanks to his overt support and endorsement of the Khilafat movement. I think while we all digest what Sandeep has tabled, like I said, buried in the annals of history without the public knowing it, and he's bringing it to light, we shall resume this conversation with Sandeep Balakrishna, and in the next conversation, Sandeep will take us into the details of Malegaon riots and beyond. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you as always for watching Dharma Podcast, and appreciate if you could like, share and subscribe Dharma Podcast so that the erudition that Sandeep brings to the table conversation after conversation reaches a wider audience. Thank you again.